The sky over Earth turned dark for a moment. A massive silver ship slowly floated down, blocking the sun. People in the city looked up, surprised and scared, but the ship did not attack. It simply opened a long ramp, and out walked a tall, four-armed alien in a shining white uniform. His name was Master Vorak, the most famous alien chef in the galaxy. He had won every cooking competition across 30 planets. He had cooked for kings, queens, generals, and warlords. And now, for the first time, he had come to Earth, not to destroy it, but to taste its food. But Vorak was not impressed. He walked through a busy Earth street market with a sour look on his face. "Primitive smells," he said with a sniff. "Too much salt, too much grease, and no elegance." He kicked over a hot dog cart and walked away. The alien cameras followed him, broadcasting his visit live across the galaxy. His fans cheered from different planets. "Show them how it's done, Master Vorak," they said. "Teach those Earthlings what real cooking is." On Earth, people felt insulted. TVs, phones, and news screens showed the alien chef laughing at their recipes. One reporter asked him, "What do you think of human food so far?" Vorak chuckled, his sharp teeth showing. "It's food for animals," he said, "not for chefs like me." Deep inside a small kitchen across town, a young human named Ben watched the news. He wore a stained apron and stood beside a rusty stove. He worked in a little food stall, just him and his grandma's old recipe book. He wasn't a famous chef. He had never left Earth. But something about Vorak's arrogance made his hands tighten on the pan. Ben wasn't angry for himself. He was angry for the food made with heart. With memory, with love, he looked down at a photo of his grandma, smiling next to a bowl of her famous stew. She said our food could bring tears to the soul. He whispered, "Let's prove it." Later that day, Vorak stood on a stage in the middle of New York City. He spoke into a giant mic, his voice echoing across the streets. "I challenge your best human chef," he said. "Let us have a cook-off, right here, right now." The crowd gasped. No one stepped forward. Who would dare cook against the galaxy's most powerful chef? But then, a quiet voice came from the back. "I will," said Ben, stepping forward with his small bag of ingredients. Vorak laughed so hard he almost fell off the stage. "You," he shouted, "you look like you fry bugs on the sidewalk." Ben just smiled and said, "I don't need fancy tools, I just need fire." And my grandma's recipe. The cooking tables were set on one side. Vorak had a glowing table full of high-tech alien tools and glowing spices. On the other side, Ben had a wooden table, a pan, a gas burner, and some vegetables. The crowd watched in silence. The challenge had begun. Vorak moved with speed and grace. His forearms chopped, stirred, and sprinkled exotic powders. Steam hissed and colors exploded in the air. Ben, on the other hand, moved slowly. He peeled potatoes, chopped onions, and added broth into a simple pot as the smell from Ben's pan rose into the air. People nearby began to smile. It was warm, soft, and full of memories. Vorak sniffed and paused, confused. His dish smelled perfect, strong, and exciting, but Ben's smell touched something deeper. A little girl in the audience tugged her mother's hand. "Mommy," she whispered, "that smells like home." Even Vorak's assistant looked toward Ben's side, curious. The clock hit 0. Both dishes were ready. 3 alien judges and 3 human judges walked to the tables. Each took a bite of Vorak's creation firefruit stew with laser-roasted meat and plasma sauce. They nodded, impressed. Then they tasted Ben's dish, a simple stew with herbs and a thick, golden sauce. The alien judge blinked, froze, and slowly sat down. The human judge began to cry softly. Vorak stared in disbelief. "What is happening?" he whispered. "What? Is this food?" And then, something unexpected happened. Vorak, the arrogant alien chef, took a small spoon and tasted Ben's dish himself. He froze, his body stiff, for one moment, just when he saw a flash of a warm kitchen. He heard laughter, he smelled love. He dropped the spoon, his eyes wide, and the crowd. They stood up and cheered louder than ever before. Ben looked at him and said gently, "Food isn't always about power. Sometimes it's about memory, and that was just the beginning." Master Vorak locked himself inside his ship. That night, he didn't speak to anyone, not even his assistant who waited outside with worry in her eyes. The taste still burned on his tongue, not like fire, but like something ancient. Something soft. He had eaten every rare dish across the stars. He had once tasted lightning jelly from the storms of Klyros. He had feasted on deep-sea worms seasoned with volcanic salt, but never had he tasted anything that made his chest feel like it was about to break open. He sat in front of his workstation, surrounded by blades, spices, and glowing recipe stones. He tried to recreate the flavor. He heated 7 different broths. He combined 37 ingredients in perfect ratios, but nothing worked. The flavor of the human stew haunted him. It wasn't just food. It was something more. Outside, Earth was celebrating. Clips of Ben's victory spread across the net. Kids were pretending to be him, holding pans and wooden spoons in their hands. Alien viewers from far planets couldn't understand what just happened. How could something so simple defeat a master like Vorak? Some said the contest was rigged. Others said the human had used emotional tricks. But Master Vorak knew the truth. He had tasted it himself, and it had shaken him to the core. He didn't sleep that night. His eyes stayed open, watching the replay of Ben cooking. The way he held the spoon gently, the way he added each thing with care. There was no rushing. No showing off, no shouting, just cooking with feeling. The next day, Master Vorak did something no one expected. He returned to the same market street where he had laughed before. The hot dog vendor he once insulted stared at him with fear. But Vorak simply nodded and dropped a silver coin into the man's jar. He walked past fried stands, noodle carts, taco stalls, and small grills. He watched humans cook. Not with machines, but with heart. He found Ben again not in a fancy restaurant, but in a small corner of a local park. Ben had set up a folding table, some soup pots, and was feeding homeless people. "Why are you doing this?" Vorak asked, his voice low. Ben looked up, surprised but calm. "Because food tastes better when shared," he said. Vorak looked around. The soup smelled simple, again but deep. He watched a hungry child smile after one sip. Vorak's hands tightened. "What was that golden sauce you used?" he asked. Ben smiled and replied, "Family." Vorak frowned. "That is not an ingredient." "To us it is," said Ben, stirring the pot. He pointed to a jar. It had handwritten letters on it. Love and memory. Inside, there were only basic herbs, garlic, salt, and a little sugar. But the way Ben used it made it something else entirely. That night, Vorak couldn't rest again. Something inside him had broken. No, something had awakened. He walked through the quiet halls of his ship. He entered the room where his old memories were stored, a locked chamber he had not opened in years. The walls lit up with photos and scents from his homeworld. And there she was, his mother, with 4 arms and a kind face. He remembered sitting on the floor as a child, watching her cook. She never used machines. She always sang while stirring. He remembered that now, clearly, for the first time in decades, and he cried, alone in the darkness, the next morning. Vorak returned to the cooking grounds, without cameras, without crowds. He set up a table next to Ben's. He tried again, not with fancy tools, but with what he remembered. He chopped slowly, boiled gently, tasted carefully. And for the first time in his life, he smiled while cooking. Ben watched silently, not saying a word. Vorak placed his dish down in front of him. It was messy, uneven, a little too salty, but it was his. It was real, and when he tasted it, he finally understood what had been missing all along. It was never about the recipe, it was about what you carry in your heart, and suddenly, the proud alien chef didn't feel so proud anymore. He felt something else, hungry not for food, but for understanding. The night air was quiet, but inside Master Vorek's ship, everything was burning, not with fire, but with frustration. He had tried over and over again to cook like the human, but every attempt ended in silence. No joy, no warmth, just food. He smashed a bowl on the floor, breathing hard. What am I missing? He hissed, his four hands trembling. The silence answered back with memories. Memories he did not want. He closed his eyes, and there it was, again his mother's kitchen. The smell of roasted roots. The feeling of soft arms around him, he pushed the memory away like a knife. I am the greatest chef in the galaxy, he said to himself. I do not need feelings, but deep inside, something had cracked that night. While Earth slept and stars turned above, Vorak left his ship with nothing but a small scanner and a hood pulled low over his face. He walked through the back alleys of the city. He wasn't looking for crowds. He was looking for Ben. He followed the scent knot with his nose. But with his memory, he reached a small, dimly lit kitchen tucked between two forgotten buildings. It was quiet, no lights on, but through a dusty window he saw Ben standing alone, cooking something slowly in a pot. The same golden scent drifted out, warm and familiar. Vorek's chest tightened. He could not stop himself. He opened the back door without knocking. Ben turned around, surprised but calm. You again, Ben said softly. Not angry, not afraid. Vorek didn't answer. He just stared at the pot like it was some kind of holy object. Ben stepped aside and let him come closer. This is not part of the contest. He said, You're not here to win. I need to understand, Vorak whispered. What did you put in there? Ben picked up a small jar and handed it to him. Inside, it was nothing special salt. Herbs, oil, onion flakes. But when Vorak opened the lid, he felt something strange. It wasn't the ingredients. It was the story inside them. Ben spoke slowly. My grandma used this every Sunday, she used to say. If the food doesn't make your hands shake, it isn't ready yet. Vorak touched the spoon with quiet hands. He dipped it into the stew, lifted it, and tasted it. The room faded. He was no longer in the kitchen. He was standing under the purple sun of his homeworld. He was a child again, watching his mother hum a soft tune while slicing moonfruit. He gasped and dropped the spoon. Stepping back, Ben caught him before he fell. What's happening to me? Vorak asked, his voice full of fear and wonder. You're remembering, Ben said. Vorak looked at him, eyes wide. All my years of training, all my battles, all my titles, and you. A human boy with a pot and a memory, you defeat. Me? Ben didn't smile. He just stirred the stew. Food is more than science, he said. It's the soul you hide inside it. Vorak sat down, quietly. He didn't speak for a long time, outside. The wind blew gently through the trees. Inside, the alien chef sat in front of a human stove, silent, humble, broken, and rebuilding. He didn't ask for a recipe. He didn't try to steal anything. He just watched Ben cook. Like a student watching a master, and slowly, something inside him began to shift. The scanner he brought fell to the ground unnoticed. It blinked red and sent a silent signal far into space across the stars, in a cold alien council room. A light began to flash. Master Vorak has gone off mission. A voice said, Send observers immediately. But Vorak didn't know, and he didn't care. For the first time in his life, he didn't feel superior. He felt hungry for truth, for heart, for something real. And he knew, deep down, The galaxy was about to change. All because of a human and a spoonful of memory. Asterisk far above Earth in the cold vacuum of space. A black cube drifted silently toward the planet. It had no windows, no doors. Just glowing red marks across its surface. Inside the cube were three beings with glass eyes and silver skin. They didn't speak. They didn't blink. They simply watched the signal blinking on their screen's Vorak's emergency ping. He's cooking with a human. One of them said in a flat voice, "The master is learning from the primitive species," said. Another, the third, pressed a button. Begin containment protocol down on Earth. Master Vorak stood inside Ben's tiny kitchen, his hands shaking. He had not touched his cooking tools for hours. Instead, he sat on a low wooden stool, writing something on a piece of paper. It was a recipe, but not like the ones he had written. Before, this one had no measurements, no fancy words, just feelings, just moments. Ben walked over with a warm towel in his hand. "Everything okay?" he asked. Vorak nodded slowly. "I feel like I've forgotten who I was," he whispered. "And now I'm starting to remember." Ben stirred a pot beside him, smiling a little. "That's the thing about food," he said. "It always knows." The way back, outside, in the sky, above the city. The black cube entered Earth's atmosphere. No one saw it. No alarms went off, but in Ben's kitchen. Something flickered, the lights dimmed, and the air turned cold. Vorak froze, his eyes glowing faintly blue. "They've found me," he said, standing up slowly. Ben looked confused. "Who?" "The ones who made me forget," Vorak said. He moved to the window. Staring into the dark sky, his hands clenched into fists. "They don't like change," he added. "They believe emotion is weakness." Suddenly, the ground outside shook. From the sky, thin rods of black light shot down into the street. People screamed and ran as tall figures stepped out, beings of shadow and metal. Their eyes scanned everything, then locked onto the small kitchen. Ben ran to the door. "Who are they?" "Censors," Vorak said bitterly. "They came to erase what I've learned." Without another word, he grabbed a hot frying pan and turned off the flame. Not to fight, but to protect it. The food, the memory. One of the shadow beings entered the kitchen. Its voice was like ice scraping glass. "You are in violation of Directive 7. It said, "You are a galactic master, not a memory chef. I am both now." Vorak replied, standing tall. The being reached forward to destroy the recipe sheet. But Ben stepped in front of it. "You'll have to go through me first," he said, voice steady. For a long moment, no one moved. Then another shadow being turned its head slightly. "Human," it said. "Why protect something so primitive?" Ben took a deep breath. "Because it's mine," he said. And it changed him. The shadow beings paused. They looked at Vorak, and for the first time, one of them tilted its head in confusion. He was not programmed for change. He was never a program, Ben said quietly. He was just lost. Outside, more people gathered. Watching from the streets, the smell of the stew still hung in the air. Warm, rich, familiar. A child walked forward. Holding a spoon, she looked at the shadow beings and said, "Would you like some?" The smallest of the black figures hesitated. It bent down, tasted a drop from her spoon, and blinked. "I remember," it whispered. The others stared, unsure, but something had shifted. The coldness broke for just a moment. And Vorak stepped forward. "No more erasing," he said. "No more silence." The beings vanished one by one, not in anger, but in confusion, in thought. The cube in the sky turned around and drifted away slowly. No explosions, no war, just change. Inside the kitchen, Vorak dropped into a chair. Exhausted, Ben sat beside him and passed him a spoon. "What now?" Ben asked. Vorak smiled faintly. "Now," he said, We cook something they can never erase, and together, in the quiet hum of a human kitchen, a new kind of dish began, one made not with power, but with truth. The crowd on the moon of Zareth 9 had never been this loud before. Alien lights flashed across the arena. Floating cameras buzzed through the sky like hungry insects. 50 billion beings across the galaxy were watching the final round of the grand culinary trial, and at the very center of it stood a human with a dented pan, and beside him stood a four-armed alien chef once known only for his pride. Ben adjusted his apron. Dirt still on his boots. Vorak stood still, eyes closed, breathing slowly. In front of them were two long tables, each with a timer counting down. In exactly 1 hour, they had to present the greatest dish ever made. A dish that would either unite or divide the galaxy. Ben didn't speak. He just placed a picture of his grandma on the corner of the table. Vorak saw it, and without a word, placed a small charm from his mother beside it. There was no need to talk. Their story was already boiling beneath the surface. Across from them, two elite chefs from the Council of Perfection floated silently. Their arms moved like machines. They used tools that glowed, sliced without touching, and vaporized mistakes with lasers. Their table had no so lonely precision. The crowd expected the usual fireworks, alien dishes that sparkled, hissed, and floated. But when Ben struck a match and lit a simple flame, the audience gasped. No one had seen open fire used in centuries. Ben placed a pot on the flame. Vorak began slicing vegetables by hand. There were no glowing knives, no machines, only rhythm, heat, and heart. The smell rose, slowly, not strong, but deep, soft. Like a forgotten memory walking back into the room, the judges watched silently from their golden thrones. One of them leaned forward. "Primitive again," he whispered. But another one paused. "It smells like home." The rival chefs sneered from their side. They created a dish that changed colors every 5 seconds. It sang in 4 tones and danced across the plate. But when a tiny bit touched the judge's tongue, they simply nodded. Cold, perfect. Expected, Ben's dish was still cooking. Vorak added a single scoop of the golden love and memory spice. Then he stopped. His hands trembled, and he looked at Ben. "Do you trust me?" he asked. Ben didn't answer. He just passed him the spoon. Together, they stirred the pot, two chefs from two worlds. One heartbeat, the timer hit 0. A deep chime echoed across the arena. The judges rose, eyes glowing softly. First, they tasted the rival dish. It shimmered, twisted, and floated into their mouths. They nodded politely. "Excellent," one said, as expected. Then came the human's dish. It didn't float, didn't glow, didn't sing. It sat humbly on a wooden plate, steam rising gently. The first judge tasted it and dropped his spoon. He turned away quickly, wiping his eyes. The second judge tasted it and began humming a lullaby from her homeworld, one she had not heard in 300 years. The final judge simply whispered, "This is not food, it is soul." The crowd stood in silence. No cheers, no noise, just stillness. And then, slowly, wave by wave, beings from every corner of the galaxy began to clap. Not because it was fancy, not because it was perfect, but because it was real. Vorak stepped back, eyes full of tears. He whispered to Ben, "I don't care if we win." Ben nodded. "Neither do I." But then a loud voice echoed from above, "This round has no winner," said the council leader, "because this dish cannot be judged." Ben looked up, confused, but the leader smiled for the first time in years. "It is already won," somewhere deep in the crowd. One of the shadow beings from before was watching. It didn't speak. It just placed a hand over its heart and vanished. Back on the ground, Vorak turned to Ben and said softly, "We've done something impossible." Ben smiled. We've reminded the galaxy how to feel, and with that, the two chefs walked away not as winner and loser, but as brothers of the flame. Asterisk on the ice-covered planet of Riker 7. An old alien cook lit a fire for the first time in 200 years. He did not speak, he did not smile. He just sat in silence, placing raw roots into a small pot beside him. His granddaughter watched with wide eyes. "Why aren't you using the vapor machine?" she asked. The old cook shook his head slowly. "I want to remember what food used to feel like," he whispered, far away, on the jungle moon of Vasa. Chefs began turning off their machines. They crushed herbs with their bare hands, letting the scent rise into their skin. They wept as old songs returned to their hearts, one by one, across the stars. Kitchens were awakening, not because of orders, but because of a story, a human and an alien cooking together. Ben didn't know about any of this. He was back on Earth, planting vegetables in his garden with dirty hands and a quiet smile. Vorak was still with him, learning how to grow instead of conquer. They didn't talk much. They didn't need to. One afternoon, while peeling potatoes, Vorak paused. "Something's wrong," he said quietly. Ben looked up from the soil. "You feel it too?" In the distance, a message flickered through the holoscreen. A planet had banned emotional cooking. A council of elders claimed it was dangerous. "Feelings cause rebellion," they said. "Order must return to food." Ben stood still, hands clenched. "They're afraid," he said. Vorak nodded, "and afraid rulers become cruel." That night, the sky above Earth lit up again. Not with celebration, but with warning. A fleet of black ships appeared near the moon. Symbols of the Council of Order glowed on their sides. They sent a message to Earth, clear and cold. Surrender the human and the traitor chef, or face silence. Governments panicked. People screamed, but Ben did not hide. He packed a small cooking kit, tied his apron around his waist, and stepped outside. Vorak was waiting for him, holding a bowl of raw ingredients, no weapons. Ben asked. "Only flavor," Vorak replied. The two walked to the landing field, where the black ships hovered like shadows over the ground. A ramp opened, and figures in silver armor stepped forward. Weapons in hand, one raised a device and aimed it at Vorak. "You broke the code," it said. "You infected the galaxy with weakness." Ben stepped forward, holding a spoon, "Then taste the weakness," he said. The soldiers laughed. But the lead figure paused. Something about the human's voice made him stop. Ben pulled out a pot, lit a small fire, and began to cook. The smell rose quickly: warm bread, garlic, and something deeper. One soldier lowered his gun, sniffing the air. I remember this," he whispered. "It smells like my home before the war," the leader shouted. "Hold your position," but the soldiers began to step closer. Ben stirred the dish, looked at the alien commander, and said, "We are not fighting, we are feeding." The commander's hand trembled. His own childhood surfaced without warning. The scent of his mother's kitchen before it was destroyed in the riots. He closed his eyes, then lowered his weapon. "Go," he said softly, "before they send something worse." Vorak and Ben turned, leaving the pot behind. The soldiers stayed there, surrounding it like a fire in the dark. No orders, no speeches, just silence and food. By the next morning, rumors had already spread. An army stopped by a stew. A spoon defied a ship. A memory beat metal, and on every planet, in every language, one question rose: what's in that food? But those who had tasted it knew the answer. It wasn't the spice, the heat, or the salt. It was something far older. It was truth. No one heard the sound when the first kitchen planet shut down its machines. There was no speech, no announcement, no warning, just silence, and then fire. Real fire in thousands of homes. On ships, in dusty camps, and frozen stations, aliens lit flames by hand for the first time in centuries, not for war, not for heat, but to cook. Ben didn't know it yet. But his stew had crossed light years faster than any signal. It had slipped into the hearts of beings who didn't even know they had hearts anymore. It had changed soldiers, scientists, warlords, even pirates, all because one quiet human believed. Food was not about power, but memory, deep in a floating space market. An old alien woman served soup from a rusty pot when a child asked what it was called. She smiled and said, "This is human-style hope across the galaxy." Someone painted a wall with just 4 words: "Cook with your heart." But not everyone was celebrating. The Council of Order sat in their silver tower, silent and angry. Their systems were breaking, their control slipping. They blamed one man and one alien. They sent hunters, spies, robots, threats. But none could erase a taste once it was remembered. Ben and Vorak had disappeared from the public eye. Some said they fled to the mountains of Earth. Others believed they hid on a forgotten farming moon. A few claimed they were dead. But those who believed, truly believed, knew the truth. They had not vanished. They were building something. It began with a garden, then a table, then a single sign made of wood and truth. The school of soul cooking. There were no rules, no ranks. Anyone could come, rich or poor, alien or human, machine or mutant. The only requirement was one question: why do you cook? The first student was a child with no family. The second, an ex-soldier who hadn't smiled in 20 years. The third, a broken robot who could barely remember its original code. Each one arrived empty. Each one left full, not just with food, but with something inside them they thought they had lost. Vorak taught the students to chop with care. Ben taught them to stir without fear. They both taught the same final lesson: you're not cooking for mouths, you're cooking for memories. Years passed, the council fell quietly, not with war, but with silence. People stopped following rules made by those who had forgotten how to taste. No one burned the laws, they simply stopped obeying them. In time, a new map of the galaxy was drawn not by lines, but by flavor. There were stars known for their spices, moons known for their soups, and one small green planet at the center of it all. Earth pilgrims came from everywhere to see the fire, the garden, the table, and sometimes, if they were lucky, they found 2 old men sitting side by side, peeling potatoes in the morning sun, one with 4 arms, one with 2, both smiling, both quiet. Still cooking, a reporter once found them and asked, "Is this the end of your story?" Ben laughed. "There's no end to a recipe that keeps growing." Vorak nodded. "As long as someone remembers a flavor, we're still here." And that night, under the soft stars of a peaceful sky, a new stew boiled slowly over open fire. Made not with machines, not with science, but with hands, tears, and love. And when the first spoon touched a child's lips, he didn't speak. He just closed his eyes and remembered something he hadn't lived yet, but somehow already knew. Because some stories are not told, they are tasted.